there's an answer for it. Of course, there can, not of course, but I would say it's not possible that for one and the same actions there are at the same time two different causes or reasons in Kant. There's always one decisive cause, either a moral one or an amoral one, say love or whatever. So being motivated by love to do a good action is not bad, but it doesn't create an inner moral burst of the action, so to speak. It's legality, not morality. But the point is that Kant would say there is a situation possible in which even an action done from love or from some other motives or feelings, so to speak, have an inner burst. Namely, if the predisposition of doing it was cultivated before from a moral perspective. So if you cultivate your feelings because of respect of the moral laws, then your feelings, being the cause afterwards of the moral actions, have inner moral worth, because before, out of respect of the moral law, you cultivated your dispositions to do so. You see what I mean? So it's so to speak, it's not the feeling. Maybe the feeling is, so to speak, the indirect cause of the action in this situation, but in the end it was your respect for the moral law, which is the in-behind reason why you did the moral law, the moral action. I'm not sure if I expressed myself correctly. Okay, then maybe last, respect. It's very short. What about respect? And this concept, to say that at the start, has not so much to do with the concept of respect you find in the groundwork. Maybe the concept of respect you find in the groundwork is respect associated more with a moral feeling. Because here it's about maybe something, little bit something different. What is he talking about here? Respect, referentia, is again something merely subjective, a feeling of special kind, not a judgment about an object that it would be a duty to bring about or promote. For such a duty, regarded as a duty, could be presented to us only through the respect we have for it. The duty to have respect would thus amount to being put under obligation to duties. Accordingly, it is not correct to say that a human being has a duty of self-esteem. He's talking about self-esteem. He didn't Selbstschätzung. He didn't use that phrase, as far as I can remember, in the groundwork as being in the center of his concept of Achtung sehr. It must rather be said that the law within him unavoidably forces him respect for his own being. So is this the same feeling of respect he's talking about in the groundwork? Is this his a priori feeling? I don't know. And this feeling, which is of a special kind, is the basis of certain duties, that is, of certain actions that are consistent with his duty to himself. Special duties doesn't seem to be the feeling of respect of the groundwork, because the feeling of respect in the groundwork is not about special duties, it's about obligation in general. It cannot be said that he has a duty of respect toward himself, for he must have respect for the law within himself in order even to think of any duty whatsoever. So here it seems something special. In the next sentence it seems to be almost like the feeling of respect in the groundwork. So there's lots of possibilities for discussion and research going on to understand first how these two types of aesthetic preconceptions and whatever mean in itself, how they are related to each other, and in which relations they stand to what he claimed before in the groundwork or maybe in the critique of practical reason. It's not possible for us to understand what's going on just reading the sentences. So we have to do more work to really go into the details here. Okay. So I don't know how much time.
What do you prefer? Have a coffee break now and then only 30 minutes, or we have 30 minutes now, have a break and then we have a discussion with Gideon?
I don't know. What do you think?
What do you prefer if you are,
Yeah, maybe
maybe
we should finish it now.
finish?
Yeah, maybe. We go to the introduction, to the paragraphs 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which is a little bit more complicated than the rest of it. It starts here you have this definition: virtue signifies the moral strength of the will, repeats himself, and so on and so forth. What is which adds to his moral philosophy, or the metaphysics of moral philosophy, where is it? Are the paragraphs which here. Doctrine of the Elements of Duties, Part 1. So now the book starts, so to speak. The book starts after 30% or 40% of the book is already put down. Yeah, the introduction, like the first introduction to the critic of judgment, is a book for its own, so to speak. And now he discusses a question he doesn't discuss this way in the groundwork. And the question is, why didn't he discuss this question in the groundwork, although it seems to be of essential importance to the groundwork as well. And that's a question how obligation is possible. It's not the question of the possibility of the categorical imperative. It's a question of how can I be myself the one who obligates myself? Or how is it possible that I, on the one side, be the ground of active obligation, and on the other side be the object of passive obligation, so to speak? How is that possible? So, normally people would think, I cannot put myself under obligation, because what is the cause of obligation? The cause of obligation is always the will. So, if I change my will, I change obligation. I cannot put myself under obligation to drink a glass of wine this evening at 7 o'clock. I can do that, but it doesn't make sense. Because of what? Because 5 minutes to 7 I can say, no, I changed my will, I will have a beer. There's no contradictory, because if it is true that the will is the ground of obligation, then changing the will means changing the obligation. And therefore you need to have some concept which makes clear how you can put yourself under obligation. And the idea, of course, is not Pistorius, but this funny guy we met yesterday. Being a member of two worlds at the same time, so to speak. So the rationalistic, the rational, intelligible part, and the empirical part. And the idea is that you, through your nature being a pure rational being, obligate yourself as a lawgiver in terms of being obligated to act on the laws of your pure rationality. And the deeper question now is, why doesn't Kant discuss that as a problem in the groundwork? Because in the groundwork we find, of course, a similar conception. He says in the third section of the groundwork that the intelligible world is the ground of the empirical world, and therefore the categorical imperative is possible just because you have these two worlds and two standpoints or whatever. And maybe one of the ideas or the answer to the question why Kant discusses this in some detail in the introduction to the Doctrine of Virtue is that in the Doctrine of Virtue something is put in addition, is added to the picture which you do not find in the groundwork, namely the idea of ends being at the same time duties. And the idea now of the Doctrine of Virtue is that you are not bound just by being pure rational being, but that you, via your power of free choice, have to decide to act on ends which are given to you by pure practical reason. You know, in the groundwork you have this subjective ends, and that you have the idea given by you through your inclination, and you have the idea that reason gives the law. And then you put the moral law as being the norm of deciding whether or not you are allowed to promote your subjective ends. But then it is a duty now to promote ends which are not yet realized in the empirical world, but should be realized and are given at the same time through pure practical reason is something new. You have to do something more than just look at your maxims. You have to fix a meta-maxim of the Doctrine of Virtue, namely to decide yourself to promote these ends. And this is the question of obligation he is discussing here. And because of that, he might be driven or motivated to discuss this problem. This already applies to the groundwork, now in more detail in the Doctrine of Virtue, just because something is added to the picture, with the idea that you, so to speak, have to decide whether or not you want to act on the maxims which follow from the idea that pure practical reason gives you these different types of ends. And this distinction between active and passive obligation is made explicitly in terminology by Christian Wolff in 1739 published Philosophia Practica Universalis. You know, this 1300, 1600 books, pages book. Okay, maybe just to start with, to put the problem. And you know, sometimes he uses, this is typical Latin expressions, to, because sometimes you know, as I told you, it doesn't make sense here because you have obligation in the English translation, but in the German you have probably Verbindlichkeit. And because, you know, I told you the German words were invented at the time by somebody, and then maybe a guy not being familiar with these new German words does not know what is the Latin original of that, and therefore it's put here in brackets, so to speak. As you find it in the other way around, for instance, in Baumgarten's Metaphysica. He has the Latin text, and the Metaphysica was published, I think, in 1739, and there were later editions, and in later editions he had asterisks, and then he had as footnotes the German translations. So he would say blah 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 blah, obligatio blah blah blah, and then he said obligatio in German, Verbindlichkeit, Verpflichtung. And Kant makes it the other way around, so just to make sure that everybody knows what we are talking about. Okay. If the I that imposes obligation, the I imposes obligation, not God, remember, not God, not the emperor, not the other guys. The I that imposes obligation is taken in the same sense as the I that is put under obligation. The duty to oneself is self-contradictory concept. For the concept of duty contains the concept of being passively constrained. I am bound. So autonomy, you know, means that you are only bound by those laws which you give to yourself. But if the duty is a duty to myself, I think of myself as binding and so as actively constraining I, the same subject, and imposing obligation. And the proposition that asserts a duty to myself, I ought to bind myself, would involve being bound to bind myself. A passive obligation that was still, in the same sense of the relation, also an active obligation, being at the same time two different things. And hence a contradiction. One can also bring this contradiction to light by pointing out that the one imposing obligation, auctor obligationis, could always release the one put under obligation, as I told you. You said, okay, I changed my mind. From the obligation, so that he would not be bound at all to a duty he lays upon himself. This involves a contradiction. Be aware that the focus of the concept of obligation and duty changes in the doctrine of virtue. In all the duties in the groundwork are divided into duties against oneself and duties against other people. So, in the doctrine of virtue, he argues that all duties are duties against oneself. So there exist, of course, special duties against oneself and special duties against other people, but even duties against other peoples are at their basis duties against oneself. Because of what? Because you yourself give the law. You obligate yourself. And this can also maybe found in theory in the groundwork, but doesn't express this in the groundwork. So, but here it's very clear that every duty is a duty against oneself, although it regards other people. Because if you could not regard yourself as being the author of the obligation, it would mean that there is obligation founded on heteronomy, and that doesn't work. Nevertheless, a human being has duties to himself, and here duties to himself are not the specific duties against yourself, not to kill yourself and so on and so forth, but duties in general. And you can be confused about this way of expressing himself of Kant. For suppose there were no such duties, then there would be no duties whatsoever, and so no external duties either. Even there would be external duties might mean here duties against other people. It could also mean no juridical duties, because there are external duties in the narrow sense of the word. But here it's clear, every duty is a duty to himself, and without them there would be no duties against other people. For I can recognize them under obligation to others only insofar as I at the same time put myself under obligation, since the law by virtue of which I regard myself as being under obligation proceeds in every case from my own practical reason, and in being constrained by my own reason, I'm also the one constraining myself. So this is, you might remember, I had a remark about that, I think in the first lecture, the difference between Kant and Heiner, or Kant and Habermas, and Kant and Heiner, and the Hegelians, and so on and so forth. Because here it's very clear about I wouldn't recognize the other subject, other human beings as beings which are morally important for me if I would be no self-relation existing in which I spend my own, so to speak. The other ones only have moral importance because I realize myself to have given the law to myself. And then they can put it. So you can put me under obligation, of course. You can say, well, hello, I'm in distress, and because I gave the law to myself, making sure that other people in distress need my help and they have the right on being helped by myself, then, so to speak, I know that I should help you myself. So it's no more, it's not that you put me under obligation, maybe it's an instantiation, a realization, a concretization of a normative relationship in which I stand to myself and to you when you come into the picture and you claim to be a moral subject. So. Okay, and then you find, you see the solution to this apparent antinomy. And I mentioned the solution before. And it's interesting that, you know, he introduces a new antinomy nobody knew before reading this book, an antinomy related to the question of how might it be possible to be obligated. So you have the original antinomy of pure reason, the critic of pure reason being divided into several ways. Then he invented a new one in the second critique, and he had new ones in the third critique, and now he had another one here. And he says, well, it's apparent, so on and so forth, and I can show you how moral obligation is possible. Do you have any comments, hopes, feelings, questions? Are you in distress? Do you need compassion or help with regard to these passages? So actually you really need to go into detail, takes you a very, very long time. But what follows really isn't that. He's talking about your duties, kings. He has the story about lying in paragraph 9.
Yes. Kind of, we could say that because I was thinking about the sentence, the feeling of beauty, that is harmony between the faculties. And on the contrary, the moral feeling is to have a conflict between the faculties. I was thinking about if this harmony between faculties could be the cultivation to be prepared to have a fight or a conflict with the faculties.
Yeah.
Because
it's a good point. If you have cultivated your moral feelings, what would be the result? The result would be that your opponent, the natural feelings are not that strong any longer. So if you have there's another concept, there's a certain concept missing here in the picture, namely the concept of character. So it distinguishes between intelligible character and empirical character. And feeling come in with the character, the concept of character is associated with feelings and so on and so forth. And the idea is that, and the question is why doesn't he mention the character? Nobody knows really. That if you have formed yourself to have a good character, then it's much more easier for you to do the moral work, so to speak, because you already have won some battlefields against your strong inclinations which are opposed to moral actions. So moral feelings are feelings which fit very well with this idea of a moral character. And then you do your moral actions, so to speak, with joy. And this joy and pleasure is not something which is a sign of heteronomy, but on the opposite, it's a sign of autonomy, because you yourself gave you your character. So autonomy is in the picture just because you did it. But if this character was given to you by nature, really as in some passages Schiller will have it, then you cannot claim that your actions have an inner moral worth. So if you were born with a smart character and you recognize your moral duties and have no inclination to be bad and to harm other people, then you had personally good luck and you do what morality demands you to do, but you cannot claim that you really, it was you, so to speak, that you as a spontaneous, willing being made that. It was a gift by nature. It's fine with Kant, but it makes a difference for him whether you have your fortune acquired by your own, or it was given to you by your family, for instance. By chance, by nature, by luck, so to speak. That makes a difference. It's a working ethic, so to speak. Okay. I don't know, paragraph 9 is about lying, but it will be the topic of the next one. So, I don't know. No feelings, no hopes. No desperation.
No desperation.
Then I'm done.
Great.
Okay.
We'd like to thank you so much,
Thank you for your
Heiner,
attention. Thank you very much.
for a very, very nice and clear course. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. But the best is still ahead of us.